day, everyone. This is your teacher, Miss Mars. And on today's video, I will teach you Lesson 2 of Unit 1, Introduction to Materials Development. Lesson 2 is all about the current trends and issues in materials development. And take note, by the end of this video lecture, you will have the following competencies. First, point out the positive and the negative trends in materials development. And second, you'll be able to mention and explain various issues on materials development. So, class, if you are ready, then without further ado, let's begin. Obviously, the current pandemic has brought an abrupt shift of educational landscape. And everybody is pretty much overwhelmed of the changes that this pandemic has given us. In fact, in the delivery of instruction, not only as teachers are overwhelmed, but I'm pretty sure you students as well. Since before we do face-to-face classes, but now it's already a distant delivery of instruction. No more face-to-face. Everything is done either in modular or online form or a blended or a combination of two. Like it's a blended delivery of instruction. So probably you must have pondered on what are the changes does this pandemic has brought to English language teaching. And it is in that premise where this lecture on Lesson 2, specifically trends and issues in materials development, will be based on. Okay, so now let's start talking about the positive trends. There are 8 positive trends that I am going to share with you, class. And the first one is that materials should actually require learners to invest for themselves and discover how a certain vocabulary or expression in the target language is used in context. So there should be a way for students to be able to discover themselves and unleash their skill to discover and learn by themselves. So they should have extra effort. And how would it be possible? That would be possible through the materials that we created. So if we are going to create a module, let's say, because now in the basic education, elementary and high school, especially in the public schools, the delivery of instruction is done in modular approach, and the modules should stimulate the learners way to discover or stimulate the learner's skill so that he or she would be able to discover how a specific expression of a target language, which is English, is used in context. So the material should not spoon feed the students, but rather should allow the students to work as learners. The second positive trend is that more materials use the corpus data reflecting the language used. So corpus data, class, it is a collection of spoken or written language, and they are used for a variety of reasons and situations. So more materials now use of the corpus data, like how language should be used both in written and in spoken, and materials do not just focus on the teaching of grammar, but more specifically the practical use of language, because that is actually the reason why we are studying English, let's say, is for us to be able to use it in written and in spoken. And materials should allow learners to do that, especially now, class, in the current situation that we are in. We are very much restricted. We don't have face-to-face gatherings. So now we communicate through social media. With that, we should really do our very best trying to communicate both in written and spoken, following the etiquettes and the rules in doing such using the online platform. So what are the etiquettes online? And let's say you wanted to communicate to your teacher, so of course you do that through email. What are the things that you have to consider when you email a teacher or when you inquire something? So that is meant by the second one. And that should be reflected in the English language materials that material developers and teachers will create. The third one is that more extensive reader series that are created now with fewer linguistic constraints and more provocative content. So material developers now are actually incorporating in their materials contents that provoke the readers or learners to react. So basically, they included topics that would allow students to react, and this time they are not to learners here should not be too conscious that they commit mistakes in grammar. So let's say a certain material developer should make use of timely topics. Let's say they will pose a question in their materials on the upcoming election 2022 of the Philippines, or perhaps how the Filipino government, or how the Philippine government rather, definitely take actions to control the pandemic. And with that, it would allow the learners to react because they experience that, and they should be given ample avenue for them to express their ideas and thoughts about the issue. And the fourth one, there is already an increase in attempts to personalize the learning process. So, materials that are created by material developers and teachers, they now allow the learners to personalize the learning process. And it's very timely to talk about this one, especially that it's pandemic and there is this distant delivery of instruction where you of course learn from home and you do it in your own pace, though you watch our video lecture, you answer the task that I gave you, but oftentimes, for example, there are certain portions that you don't understand, so you explore it yourselves, and it's up to you how you would be able to learn best, because that's what is the essence of an online delivery of instruction, or a blended form of instruction, which is a combination of modular or online. And the fifth one, there is an increasing attempt to gain the effective engagement of the learner. So, effective engagement class, it is also known as the emotional engagement. And here, it is actually the learner's emotional connection with the materials given. Let's say if you create a material, you make sure that the learners will be able to feel and have an emotional engagement with it. So let's say you give them a task where they could be able to discover the value of proactiveness, the value of generosity, the value of kindness, and a lot more ways so that they will be able to have that emotional connection with the material. The sixth positive trend is there is now an increase in the use of internet as a source of knowledge, which is obviously this one is very timely. Again, before, of course, pre-COVID, we already use internet to navigate and explore and search on the things that we do not know. But now it has really like utilized most often, and most of the time now we use internet, even teaching, we do online teaching, so everything we do it online. And that's why the material should be able to allow the students to use the internet as a source of knowledge, at the same time as a way for them to learn, and especially in this distant delivery of instruction, it's very timely. The seventh one is there is an evidence of the movement towards the experience of spoken grammar. So this time, the materials would really encourage the learners to speak and just express themselves and not to be confined inside a box. And this box that I am referring to are those rules that we have in English language grammar. So we do have a lot of rules, but the movement now that dominates in language learning materials rather are allowing the learners to speak and use as descriptive grammar and not too much confined in that box, and just be conscious with all the grammar thing. And that means if you are very conscious and anxious, that would limit you to maximize what you have learned and to use what you have learned in your English classes. And the last, which is the eighth, of course, there is already an increasing ministries and institutions that create their own materials in English language English language materials where they localize them or they make use of their own context and examples, let's say, to be able to create or to explain uh, grammars and about English language or about the target language. And I am going to, of course, just type above what are the sample ministries or institutions that definitely already create their localized learning materials where they teach English language to their learner. To contextualize the number eight positive trend, for example, here in the Philippines, let's specifically consider Cebu. Of course, English language is taught and in the entire Philippines, obviously. So in Cebu, we tend to create materials here and we teach English language to our learners, but the examples that we are giving them are localized. For example, about the places in Cebu, stories about the legends or something like that, folk tales about our island or expressions that we use in our island. So something like that. We tend to localize it so that our learners would be able to. And that's all for the positive trends.